through the Mayhem, the Sightly podcast series, bringing marketing industry leaders together to discuss the ever-shifting media landscape. Learn about the ins and outs of real-time marketing, brand safety, influencers, data privacy, technology, and so much more. All from industry experts with real experience, giving you the real answers. Now, let's break through the mayhem.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sightly's Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast. I am your host, Alina Pilichowski, and I am thrilled to be joined today by Mark Schaefer, who is one of the most compelling voices in marketing today. Mark is the author of some of the world's best-selling marketing books, such as Belonging to the Brand and Marketing Rebellion. You can see them on his bookshelf right behind him. He has a fantastic marketing blog and his own marketing podcast. He is a college educator and an advisor to some of the world's top brands. So we're really excited to chat with him today about some topics near and dear to Sightly, such as brand authenticity and community. Thank you so much for joining us, Mark.
I'm delighted to be here.
So we wanted to start things really general since it's your first time on the podcast to just get some background on you, on your career journey. And I think what would be most compelling to me is going through that through the lens of the role that community played along the way and kind of how you were able to get to where you are today, fostering and leaning on a community.
Well, I started in the corporate world. I worked for a Fortune 100 company for many years and really was a pioneer in the social media space. We created some of the first internet portals. We did some of the first internet marketing anywhere. And that's where I really started getting, engaged with community for the first time. I mean, it was hard to do anything globally or even regionally before the internet. So the internet really enabled a lot of that. I started my own business about, I guess it was maybe 16 or 17 years ago, and just became endlessly fascinated with digital marketing and social media. And the thing that I think that made me different, Alina, is that I had been working for a major global company for many years. And so I had a unique perspective on the blogging scene. And for many people, it was a refreshing perspective because it was really rooted in a lot of marketing experience and how companies really work in real life. The thing that really started getting me interested in the community idea, I started exploring this around 2017. And I started writing a book called Marketing Rebellion. This ended up being probably my best known book. It's used as a text in many college classes. And the idea behind that book was that our old ways of marketing just don't work anymore. People are tired of being intercepted and interrupted and nagged and spammed, and we just have to stop. And we have to double down on things that people love. And there was a chapter in that book about belonging and community. And I projected that this was going to become a major part of marketing in the future. 1 year after the book comes out, boom, pandemic. And a lot of people are telling me during the pandemic, Mark, the things that you talked about in this book, they're all coming true. We've stripped away all the hype. We've stripped away all these, the old trite advertising narratives. We just had to get rid of all that stuff. We didn't know what to say. We didn't know what to do in this pandemic. And we had to force ourselves to really connect on a more human way. And people started surging into communities, especially online communities, because that's all we had. And so that was really the genesis for me. After I wrote that book, I realized that was the most important chapter in the book. That probably deserved to be its own book. And so I went down that path and wrote Belonging to the Brand, came out in 2023.
Wonderful. Yeah, I really enjoyed reading that. A lot of that resonated with me. And then thinking about that inflection point with COVID, shortly followed by BLM. I remember, or not BLM after the George Floyd stuff and kind of that influx and how the social world was talking about things.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at Sightly, the majority of our advertisers for a period of time would just pull budgets because they didn't know what to do. No one knew
what to say
or creative.
Yeah.
And it really was a huge incentive in some of the brand values and inputs that we've put in our platform, but kind of forcing brands to take a stance and to show their hand when previously they could get away with maybe not doing that as much.
Yeah. And I think the time is right because, number one, as I sort of signaled in Marketing Rebellion, we just need new ways. We just have got to relate to people in human ways. And if you think about it, a brand community might be the only kind of marketing people really want in their lives. Not only want it, but they need community in their lives. And I think the other thing is that, it just really weighs on me a lot, the mental health issues in the world today. And it's in the news all the time, just the levels of loneliness and isolation and depression. And, I'm not saying, oh, let's create a brand community to solve the mental health issue. I think we need to look at it as a business strategy, but I also say community helps. It really does. Community, it helps to give people a place to belong.
So in terms of a brand's approach, would you be able to delve into some examples of brands that have done that effectively in terms of fostering community in a way that feels authentic and they're not just, pushing their product at a different forum?
Yeah. Well, sort of my go-to answer when I want to look at the best companies in the marketing space is like, what are the best managed companies? What are the most successful companies? Because generally, the best managed companies do everything well. So if you look at the best brands like Nike, Lego, Sephora, IKEA, they're big into the community space. They're pioneers in the community space. They're years ahead of many other companies because they see this is the way to go. This is the best way to create direct, authentic, emotional connections with their customers. And that's what brand marketing is all about. This is the ultimate brand emotional connection. And so we would expect the best companies to be leading in those areas. Disney would be another one. Coca-Cola, right? Another one. So those are some of the, and I mentioned quite a few of those in my book.
Right. And do you think those same concepts of community can be applicable to much smaller companies or like B2B companies?
Absolutely. In fact, I think in many cases, this is a space where smaller or medium-sized companies can excel. And let me tell you why. So I was working with a big consumer product company, one of the biggest companies in the world, and they want to get into these community spaces. And the way they're thinking about it is, how does a brand show up in community? And I kept saying, a brand does not show up in a community. A person shows up in a community. And this is like a foreign concept. They're saying, wait a minute, you mean we actually have to do this? Well, we'll have our advertising agency do it. No. If you want to be part of these communities, it has to be a real person. And so I think a lot of the big companies I just talked about, they've scaled, right? They've scaled and they've had a big team. And so they've committed to this in a very, in a cultural way, in a company-wide sort of commitment. But it's a lot easier, I think, for small to medium-sized companies, just get out there and try it. But one of the things I found, Elena, was almost every community starts with 5 people.
Right.
Even Twitch, arguably the biggest community in the world, started with 5 people. And so it's not a huge commitment. It's not a big financial commitment. And so I think easily small to medium-sized businesses, and it's definitely happening in B2B. I've got some B2B examples in my book as well. I try to have a little bit of everything in there.
Right. Yeah. I think when I think of, the idea of fostering community and getting leadership buy-in, the obvious next question, and we are marketers, so everyone gets very bogged down by KPIs and, legacy measurement. So I was going through, one of the communities you mentioned is Sephora. They have Beauty Insider, and they have a forum, and I'm a customer of theirs. I've looked through there before, and just anecdotally, one time I saw someone post asking what makeup they should buy from Sephora for their 11-year-old niece for their birthday. And other people in the community chimed in, and the answer was, you don't. You go to the drugstore. An 11-year-old doesn't need beauty products. And I kind of love that, where it's like, they're fostering this trust because they're certainly not pushing products. They're telling them other name brands that you'd find at a drugstore. And so on one hand, an executive might see that and be alarmed, but on the other hand, they've proven that long-term and far-reaching, it creates brand loyalists. But it just kind of made me smile and made me think about kind of the tricky approach that measuring would have with something like this.
Well, and I spent a lot of time on this in my book, because that is a big question. And I'm glad you brought up Sephora, because I actually studied that company a lot, because 80% of their revenues come from that community. And here, this is a company, they've got brick and mortar stores in every significant city in the world, but 80% of their revenues come from this online community. So we better pay attention to this.
Yeah.
And their number one metric is engagement. Now, this is like a mind shift for me, because when it comes to social media, I am not a big fan of engagement as a metric. Mm-hmm. There's no research really that shows any sort of connection between engagement and brand loyalty, or even revenue. And I can speak from experience that you can engage yourself broke. You can engage and engage and engage and engage and just spin your wheels in online discussions without, any connection to revenue. Now, in the community world, though, why this is so important to Sephora is they say that engagement means relevance. If their customers are engaging in the community, if they're active in discussions, if they're responding to their content, their products, their ideas, that's a leading indicator to sales, mm-hmm. because it shows they're relevant. So I like that idea. And for a traditional marketer, when you start really getting into the success factors of community, it really is a different way to think. It's almost like 180 degrees from what we learned in business school. Right. It's not about controlling the message. It's about giving up the control and letting the community control the message. It's not about building a staff of employees. It's about granting power and status to the people in the community. It's not about the ROI and sales. It's about engagement. It's about discussion. It's about collaboration. It's about co-creation. It's about organic advocacy. All super important ideas for marketing, but not sometimes easily attributable to revenue. You've got to do that eventually, but that's not really the leading indicators in a community.
Right. You have to really put your customer hat back on, which to your point kind of is a 180, because you can get so deep in the trenches in the marketing world. I always laugh about my off work brain and my work brain. Like my work brain, if someone gives us $500,000, you're like, okay, that's good. In my off work brain, it'd be like, yeah, vacation for the next 5 years. But like you're able to compartmentalize. And I think for some reason, when we think about how we talk to consumers, we're really comfortable having those kind of two separate approaches when in reality, your customer hat is going to be the one that resonates with people. And that's why this approach really works.
Yeah, absolutely.
So pivoting a little bit to thinking about sort of platforms that come to mind for me when I think of community, the two that popped right away were TikTok, which I kind of want to get your take on. And then the other one is Reddit. And I am very fascinated by Reddit because there are some of the most niche subcultures in there, and people are hyperactive in there, and just very, very interesting little subworlds going on in there. So I'd be curious for those two platforms, if you would kind of deem those communities, what your thoughts are on those, because I think there's a lot of nuance with both.
Yes, great question. So I think it might be helpful to just go back up one step and talk about my definition of community. Because a lot of people confuse community and audience. A lot of people say my social media community, my blog community. It's not really a community. It's an audience, which is fine, by the way. Nothing wrong with it. But a community is different. And a community is different in three ways. Number one, a community that it has people that know each other. There's communion. It's like a neighborhood. So people who read my blog, they don't know each other. If I go away, they go away. Yeah. The content goes away. But a community is like a legacy. It's just when it's people who know each other. And Alina, this is one of the most important ideas from a marketing perspective, because the research shows when people get to know each other in a brand community, it creates a layer of emotional switching costs between you and the brand. So you mentioned Sephora and people helping each other in the community. They're friends. They're connected. They love helping each other and talking about, cosmetics and fashion and skincare. And to leave that community, and they don't want to leave that community. They literally belong to the brand. Right. So this is a really important factor. Number two is purpose. People gather because there's an intersection between the purpose of the company and the purpose of the people in the community members. So again, let's talk about Sephora. Sephora, they want to be on the edge of new things with cosmetics and skincare and new techniques and new products. And that's what their customers want too. So that's what their community is all about, trying new things, experimenting with new things. So there's a perfect intersection. Sephora doesn't have to sell. All they need to do is feed this demand to learn more about what's going on in the world of fashion and cosmetics. So purpose is really, really key. Then the last part, we hinted at this a little bit already, is this idea that the customers are really in control. In the marketing department, you might have a mission statement. You might have a marketing point of differentiation, which is sort of like bolted to the center of the earth. But in a community, there's got to be a flow. And that's very exciting because it's keeping you relevant. Those ideas, those conversations, the connections, the questions, that's going to make you relevant. So it's a little bit about giving up control. Now, let's get specifically into your question. Do we meet those three conditions in Reddit? 100%. These community forums are very they're very vital. They're filled with personalities that love these niches. They love helping. They love sharing. They love talking about Star Wars or whatever they want to talk about. They become friends. They connect. They collaborate. They're all trying to learn something together, or they're trying to change something together. So they're united in this purpose. TikTok is really, really interesting to me and this is some of the debates I've had recently on my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And where I get to on TikTok is normally groups are connected on TikTok through a hashtag.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an affinity group that can lead to community. So I think it's not specifically a community. It can be a fan base that becomes a community. It can become a discussion. It can become a mission or a cause or a source of social justice that becomes a community. But typically on TikTok, it doesn't really meet those requirements of community. I see that definitely there are important affinity groups there. There are important audiences there. There's a connective tissue there that people love, and they feel like they belong there. But it's not necessarily a community.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think about it? Challenge me.
I think I agree with you, because TikTok, at least in the way I use it, has taken a little bit of a pivot. I remember peak COVID when their user number just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And I am a terrible dancer, but I am embarrassed to admit I did one of the dances, and there was a little bit more of this like exchange where I would see in my feed one of my friends doing a dance. And so I said, I have nothing to do. I'm stuck at home. I'm going to do the dance.
Yeah.
And in that sense, there was this sort of, I don't know if it checks all of your boxes, but sort of this entertainment exchange. And it was with people I knew and cared about, and kind of in a way created community around this form of entertainment and the dances. And then it really pivoted to being much more, I would say, in a category similar to YouTube, where people got kind of carved out as these creators, and they kept that really authentic, gritty, potential first take type of content, which I think represented a big pivot in what users now expect in social media, which I think was really cool. But now it is more of an audience. There's somebody creating 3 pieces of TikTok content per day, and I'm consuming it. I'm not trying to make them laugh back. It's a
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I love that. That's a great distinction.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of come full circle for me in the app, but because of that underlying obsession with authenticity, to the point that when brands repurpose TV creative on TikTok, it doesn't do very well, because that's not what the users are expecting. I think that kind of authentic, grittier perception is what made me think of community initially when I was thinking about platforms.
Mm-hmm. Good question. Yeah. Great discussion.
I think authenticity and consistency are a topic you bring up a lot with brands. How can brands be held accountable? I think we've seen it a bunch of times. I mean, the example that's just coming to mind for some reason for me is the Apple iPad commercial crash.
Yeah.
And it sparked amazing discussion within our leadership team. People had great takes, and ultimately they ended up apologizing for it, which I don't know. Everyone can have their opinion. It felt like a bit of a flip-flop, but it's just like, if even Apple can't be consistent and kind of sticking to their guns, it's like, what's going on?
Well, so I get kind of hung up on the word authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
I think authenticity is too high of a bar for a lot of brands and a lot of people, because authenticity is like you're the same all the time. You're the same everywhere. You're disclosing everything, and that's really not how brands and companies work. It's not really how most people work. But I do think there's an expectation for honesty. I think that's a better word. And I liked that Apple had an honest response to the commercial. I definitely saw that it was tone deaf. I understood that. Right. And usually when that sort of thing happens, the reason behind it is there's an executive in the room who's in love with it.
Right. Loudest
There's
voice in the room. Yeah.
there's an executive in the room who just, and people are afraid to say, eh, you know, what about this?
Right.
And even like agencies, they don't want to upset people. They don't want to lose the account. Um, I was surprised really that a company is as big and normally as connected to their customers as Apple, messed up that way. But like you said, it shows that anybody can screw up.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe it's comforting in a weird way, maybe not. Um, Another topic I wanted to touch on, and I think about it especially through the lens of content, but the topic being AI, and just wanted to get your take in kind of what role it's taken in your life as a marketer, things that concern you, things that excite you. I, for one, have seen it really changing the volume of content for good or for bad. So kind of wanted your take on that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow. So we're gonna start a whole new podcast on this one?
We could.
All right. Let me try to be as succinct as I can. I mean, I'm like everybody. Whenever you talk about AI, you use two words: exciting and terrifying.
Right.
The exciting part is that it just unleashes a whole new level of creativity, right? It gives a voice to people without a voice. People who can't write can become writers. People who are not artistic can become artistic. It's going to unleash unbelievable opportunities, unbelievable delight. So that is, that's the exciting part. There's still some work to be done on the AI side to really make it, I think, a strong everyday use case for most small businesses. It fills in the gaps of creativity and writing and stuff like that. But the good thing is, the exciting thing is that AI is coming to us. So everything we use is going to have a layer of AI on it, whether it's Microsoft or Google Docs or whatever you use. And we're already starting to see that. So, so the use case is coming to us. And I think that's going to be very, very exciting when we'll be able to talk to our computers or talk to a smart device and stuff just happens for us. That's going to be great. A lot has been written about some of the existential threats about AI. Probably the thing I'm most concerned about will be the elimination of many entry-level jobs. I think about my own career. I would say primarily what people know me for today is a marketing strategist and a writer. And the reason I'm a good writer is because I had mean bosses with red pens, and they corrected me and corrected me and corrected me, and I became better and better and better over time. I had those entry-level jobs where I could work on press releases and company magazine articles, and people would be patient with me and make me better. And it makes me worried about what's going to happen if people aren't going to be able to hone those skills in that kind of a way. I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal that said college graduates are going to have to be prepared to enter like a mid-level management job. Like, how's that going to work out?
Right.
So I mean, I'm totally immersed in it. I'm experimenting every day, having conversations every day, trying to push the edges of the thing. So I definitely I see the potential. I think there is going to be a shakeout.
Yeah.
I just think there's so much going on, and these large language models, it takes so much money, it takes so much energy, it takes so much data that not all these and there's not a big revenue stream coming in. So there's going to be a shakeout, and but overall, there's no better time to be in marketing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's been fascinating to see how AI has played such a part in our platform at Sightly. A lot of what we do when we're starting out with a brand is fill out their brand profile. And we really view that as their playbook that will then connect to social listening, connect to activation on YouTube and other platforms. And initially it was a pretty manual process, and we could have it take up to like 4 hours. Now we use generative AI. It takes a first stab at filling it out, and we find it's a lot faster when people are reacting to AI's first stab, but everything's editable. So no one is scared that their job is going anywhere, but we can easily have this starting place where, let's say you're working with you're working with Pepsi, and it scours all of the walled gardens, all of the internet for all the answers we want. And then they're saying yes or no versus doing it from scratch. And depending on who you're talking to, that's a really scary thing. So that's been a use case for me where there's been virtually no pushback. Everybody loves it.
Yeah.
And it's saving hours and hours of time. But to your point, when you're thinking about how it's impacting, somebody writing an article or things entry-level people have a learning curve on, it might impact jobs, but we'll see. I haven't seen that is the case at all yet.
Mhm.
It still needs so much help when it comes to content and whatnot, but it is saving a ton of time.
Yeah.
So, I guess we talked about the good things and the bad things in AI, just opening it back up to kind of end on a positive note. What are you most excited about for the future of marketing and the future of marketers?
Well, I'm actually thinking a lot about that lately. I'm working on a new book that kind of addresses this. And when people say, "Oh, you're working on a new book," it must be a book about AI. I mean, what else would it be, right? And really, it's sort of the anti-AI book in a way. And if you look at, if AI keeps getting better and better and smarter and more creative, one of the last things we have left as human beings is crazy. And if you look at, you mentioned briefly this this wall of content that's being created by AI. I saw this demo the other day. This advertising agency is promoting a new operating system where basically you could take like one piece of content and you can like multiply it and amplify it. It goes forever across every language and every platform. And I'm watching this thing and it just is making me physically ill. It's just so much noise.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so dull. And I think we've gotten to a point in marketing where we're like, we've almost institutionalized dull. And so much of our marketing is focused on conforming to Google or conforming to SEO or conforming to an algorithm. And we've put ourselves in these little boxes. And then we want performance marketing. We want to know the ROI of this tweet or whatever. And we've lost our way. We've lost sight of creativity and this human connection. And I feel in many, many places, maybe 97% of the places in marketing today, marketing is just this empty husk. There's no life. There's no soul.
Yeah.
And it's time to pump some. It's time for like a transfusion. And I think the thing that can save us is a little bit of crazy. Is what does it take to stand out in the world?
Yeah.
And if you think about the things of the marketing activations or the advertising that you love and you talk about and you share, they're a little bit crazy. And so I think that's what we need to think about. We need to think about audacity, because this wall of noise is just going to get higher.
Right.
It's just and so we've got to, what's left. I think we have to be a little crazy.
I think for the future marketers, I think Gen Z is ready for that, and I think they're already tired of the noise. I saw the other day that dumb phones are trending because they're sick of smartphones. Like they're going back to basics. And I'm like, oh, it's so funny how everything is so cyclical. But I love that. A little bit crazy. All right. Well, can we end with some plugs of where else to find you if people want to continue to learn more?
Sure. Well, it's really easy to find me. All you have to do is remember businesses grow. You don't have to remember my name. You don't have to. My name's not as hard as your name, but people, they get messed up with Schaefer too. If you remember businesses grow, you can find my blog, my podcast, my books, all my social connections, and I'd love to hear from people who hear your show, Alina.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Mark.
Hi, I'm Hannah, one of the producers for Sightly's Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast. We want to thank you so much for listening to the show. If you want to learn more about the guests we had on today, we included additional information about them in the show notes. Finally, if you'd like to be on the podcast, or if you know someone that would make a great fit, you could fill out the form at sightly.com/podcast. We hope you have a great day.